Hey, you guys, what is happening? Oh, I don't even want to talk about it as far as how long it has been since I have done a podcast. But you know what? We're going to go ahead and talk about it because life happens, right? So, hope everyone's having an incredible start to their week so far. Oh my gosh. I mean, it feels like it has honestly been forever since I've done a podcast. But in reality, I feel like it's only been a couple weeks, but it does feel like it's been forever. And if you can't already hear it in my voice, thankfully, I actually do have a voice at this point because let me just rewind my life and update you guys about what's been happening. But before we get into that, y'all already know what's up. Let's talk about what earrings I'm wearing today. I am rocking my little witchy earrings, aka summer ween earrings, aka your girl's ready for fall. Yeah, and it may be like hot as a witch's you know what outside. Pun intended. But here's the thing, I love all things fall and I love keeping it cool in my house. And it's even funnier this time of year because I'm going to start breaking out all things pumpkin. I'm not going to get too crazy because I am going to keep a lot of like spring summer decor up in our house, but I am going to be taking out the little orange pumpkins. And when it's in my budget, may or may not be hitting up a couple of those stores that are already bringing out all things spooky season. So, if you're with me and you like all things fall and you like all things Halloween, even Summerween y'all already know, y'all should be used to it by now. Shout out to the person who makes most of my earrings, let's be honest, that I'm rocking lately, especially these days. And I'm pretty sure I've been pronouncing it wrong, but at some point I'm actually going to need to ask her like how to pronounce it. But before I say her company name, it's Mark Alexander Clay, Clay Co. She's on Instagram. She does some really cool reels, by the way. But she just recently dropped her summer wing collection. She's got some really beautiful fall earrings. And I'm like, take my money, girl. Because I literally I just placed an order, came in no more than a week ago. And she's already dropping this bomb collection for fall, not Halloween, fall related. And I'm like, yeah, your girl, I'm tempted to get some. I'm tempted to get some more, but it's all about self control, right? So I'm just gonna give it a little bit of maybe a couple weeks and then place another order. So, but shout out to her because she does incredible work with her clay earrings. I mean, for real though, look at like all that detail. It's super cute, super cute, and they're small. She makes bigger earrings, studs. I would consider these more of like a medium sized earring, but anywho, let's get into it. So, a couple weeks ago, if y'all have been watching me for a little bit, you might or may not have seen that the husband, yes, was actually one of my guests. How funny is that? We had so much fun, y'all. We went to Orlando for a week for some training for our business. It was an incredible opportunity, incredible memory. We had a lot of fun. And if you seriously watched the podcast, y'all, for that specific week, I even bragged on and talked about all the things that I did to get ready and prepared and do all the things to make sure I didn't get sick. But you know what? Life happens. And we were among, what was it, almost 10,000 people at this training event. And it was ridiculous how many people were there. But it was so cool because there were about 12 countries, I believe, represented. So when we're in one of the busiest parts of the US, aka Disney, aka Orlando, but then not to mention the fact that we're amongst 10,000 people ish, getting all the things done, training, all the fun things, it's almost kind of the inevitable. But you know what the crazy thing was? Is that I was fine that whole week, and then when I got home, bam, it hit me in the worst way possible. And honestly, I haven't even felt like that, y'all, since like, gosh, when was it? Like 2019, like late 2019. Yeah, it was like maybe mid year of 2019, towards the end of the year ish. But it was awful. Yeah, it was towards the end of the year. But I haven't felt like that since then. So, hallelujah, your girl's feeling a lot better. And I have a voice because that was the second reason. Because we went out of town, we did the podcast that week while we were in Orlando, came back, got sick, and I was like, well, I'm not doing a podcast that week because I didn't have a voice at all, which would have been hilarious. Should have just had like AI do it for me. Wouldn't that have been something? But then the following week, I had a little bit of a voice, but then my energy levels were really low, and I just didn't think that I just didn't feel like I could be present enough, if that makes sense, to be able to do a podcast. So at this point, I was like, you know what? Enough is enough. And to be honest with y'all, I really wanted to do it last week, but ADHD, procrastination, all the things, you name it, pick one. That's the reason. And life happens, right? Life happens. But I told myself this week, and here we are today, that I was sitting down recording a new podcast because it's fun and I want to keep doing it and I don't want to leave y'all hanging, because here's the thing. One thing that I've learned, especially as y'all may or may not know when it comes to habit forming, if I drop the ball, and honestly, I feel like if I went another week or two without doing a new podcast, it may not have ever happened again. And I don't want to be that, because I'm having way too much fun doing this. So thank y'all for joining me on this little journey. But let's go ahead and get into it, because it's going to be not that long today, because as I was saying earlier, my voice is officially coming back. It's not 100%. It's more like the 50-60% range. But I want to save my vocal cords as much as possible, okay? So let's go ahead and dive in. So this week's topic is going to be practicing gratitude, but practicing gratitude in a way that's more conventional, more realistic, more practical. So one thing I thought was pretty cool is that this was a topic that I've been kind of thinking about for a little while now, and it could have been more perfect timing, because in a way, I kind of actually addressed a little bit of practicing gratitude myself in my therapy session today. So if y'all didn't already know this, I go to therapy once a week, every week, religiously, every Tuesday. The only time that I've ever not gone to therapy in the last, almost, I think 4 years, 4 years, I think it's been 4 years, has been if I am absolutely ridiculously sick, like I was recently, or if I'm out of town, which that happens a lot because I travel a lot. That's it. Other than that, religiously showing up every week on Tuesday. So today, my therapist and I talked a little bit about kind of like gratitude. And what I thought was pretty interesting is not only that, but then this last Sunday, I met up, where I hosted, I should say, because I was here in my house. So I hosted some friends, some team members, and we all got together, and a little bit about what we talked about was gratitude. It was kind of like the icebreaker that we talked about in the beginning. So when I think about gratitude, I feel like that gratitude can be applied all sort of areas in our life, whether business, professional, personal. And here's the thing, is it's not easy. I mean, maybe I don't know, it could be easy for some people, but I feel like a lot of times, like, I don't know if you can relate to this or not, but I feel like a lot of times I get wrapped up in maybe perhaps one thing that's huge with me is a lot of times when I'm around people, I pick up on their aura, like their energy, right? And a lot of times if I'm around those that I'm not really as familiar with, and those people would be like what we would consider like energy suckers, if you know, you know. I feel like that whenever I'm around certain people like that in that way, that it really gets me like bogged down, and I get into like this funk, and I feel like I just get kind of like this groggy, dark mentality. And it also doesn't help with the fact that I do struggle with depression. My depression is definitely, in itself, has come a long way. I will say that much, because now I have realistic, tangible ways that I can cope and process and just kind of navigate through what that looks like for me. And with my depression and struggling with it, it's really like a day to day. It's not one of those, where a lot of times you hear and you see things that people talk about, like seasonal depression. Definitely hands down a real thing. Not knocking that. But where I struggle with depression, I feel like, is I just have to take my life one day at a time. And I wasn't always like that, but I know now that every day for me is going to be unpredictable from the next. So I've gotten a lot better over the last couple years about kind of like waking up first thing in the morning and just kind of checking in with myself, and just almost just in a funny way being like, okay, self, how do you feel? It's going to be a good day. How are we setting the tone? Is it going to be a good day? Is it going to be a bad day? Like, how do I physically and mentally feel? And sometimes I don't feel all that great, right? So that's where gratitude comes in, because I will say that I am not one of those that I like to say that I am, but I'm not. That's going to hit the ground running and automatically get her journal, write in it, and then, be like, oh, let me document and journal all the things I'm grateful for. I have done it in the past. Don't get me wrong. I have done that in the past. But I feel like because of my like anxiousness, ADHD, um, not always feeling it, I don't want to force it. And I feel like I almost get defeated sometimes when I start things and I don't finish them. So I've started lately, I've been trying to get a lot better about realistically thinking like, okay, is this something I can see all the way through? Or is this something that's really super shiny and exciting in the beginning, but I'm just probably not going to keep doing it every day? Now, there was a time, quite a while back, that I do remember being in such a just not so great place mentally that I did actually, I was gifted a journal. And when my friend gifted me a journal, that's actually what I turned it into, was a gratitude journal. And that's when I was due diligent, because I was actually getting into it at least once in the morning or once in the evening and reflecting. And I remember it being really hard in the beginning as far as finding things that I was grateful for. And I feel like it was difficult for me because I just didn't feel good. Like I was numb. I wasn't really excited about anything. I lived my life just kind of going through the motions. And I've talked about this before on previous podcasts where I would just really show up to work, and then I would maybe go to the grocery store. If I didn't already have alcohol at home, I'd have some drinks. I would numb myself basically to the point of almost pretty much just falling asleep, and then I would wake up and then I'd go to work the next day and I would just do it and repeat over and over. And so because of that, I feel like that I wasn't really feeling much, right? Because I was either super tired and groggy from work because it was like work, work, work all the time, or it was that I was filling my body with things that maybe perhaps I wasn't really feeling so good about. And it wasn't really the best things that I should have been feeding myself, right, physically, mentally. And because of that, I really developed more or less like brain fog to where I really was on the struggle bus to try to find like what were the things and to journal like what's making me happy, what am I grateful for. But there was a time, like I said, for almost a full year that I had a journal that almost every day or evening I found I even sometimes I felt like pulling teeth, but I managed to find at least one thing every day that I was grateful for. So last Sunday, when I had my friends and my team members over, we reflected back on the business that we're in. So if you didn't already know this, I am a independent Scentsy consultant, and with my team members and my friends, I really wanted them to reflect back on from the time that they joined their business and what because of the business what it did for them, right? And it didn't necessarily have to be just a physical or financial part. It could have actually benefited them in a way of, like, for example, I shared some examples with them. So just as an example, I said because of Scentsy, I have reignited my confidence in myself. I feel like it was always there, but I wasn't aware of it. I didn't feel like it wasn't existing at that time, but because of this business, it's reignited that fire within myself, and I have found a new sense of self-worth and self-confidence because of the business. And so, not, and again, it's like, even if you're watching this and you're like, well, I don't sell Scentsy, then because of whatever businesses is that you're in, or maybe you could, instead of saying something along those lines, maybe think about like if you're in therapy, like I'm in therapy, right? So because of therapy, I am I'm able to how do I word this? Because of therapy, I'm able to take a step back, and I'm more self-aware of what's happening with others around me because I'm able to get out of like my headspace because of therapy. And it doesn't have to be when you think of gratitude, it doesn't have to be something that's like super deep and going to get you in all your feels. Because sometimes, like I talked about with like my friends on Sunday, when we're practicing gratitude, what happens and what helps in the beginning is starting at like that surface level, right? So surface level being I'm grateful for the rain, or I'm grateful for the rainbow that I saw today. I'm grateful for hot coffee. Preach. I'm grateful for my loving spouse. Like, right? Like surface level things. And I feel like that you don't want to really, I try not to stop at one, because when you start, it's almost like you're above the surface level, right? And then the further along you go and the longer the list that you're making, the deeper it is going to go, whether you're intentionally wanting it to or not. And sometimes you're going to find, if you are making a gratitude, let's just say a gratitude list, and you're just going one after another, sometimes it could be that you get stuck or you stop. And you don't necessarily have to just keep going and make like a full page worth. And like I said, if you remember what I said a second ago, there was a couple years back where I did my journal and I reflected every day, right? And I just did one thing a day, because I didn't necessarily want to go down a rabbit hole of trying to find all the things. Not that that's a bad thing, but I really wanted to simply just put one thing out there that I was grateful for, one good thing that happened to me today. And especially when there were times where I was really struggling, really struggling with depression, it could have been something like, one good thing that happened to me today is that I took a shower. I brushed my teeth. Or I got out of bed. I went for a walk, right? I started reading my book again. Something like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be business related. But I feel like that when we put into practice gratitude, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, whatever the case may be, I feel like that in a way, we're actually able to channel in our faith within not only those around us, but faith within ourselves, faith within our community, faith that maybe perhaps the trials that we're going through, the mindset that we're in, is going to get better. Faith that if I continue taking these baby steps, and one step at a time and one day at a time, and sometimes, let's be honest, perhaps 1 minute to 1 hour at a time, and I'm writing that one sentence, whether it's first thing in the morning. I know a lot of times for me, like, I found that during that time period, it was easier for me to write at the end of the day. And I remember I would have my journal in my nightstand. So whenever I went to bed, right before I closed my eyes, I remember grabbing my journal, grabbing my pen, and then I would open it up. I would jot the little date down, and then just real quickly, without giving it too much thought, write one thing down. And sometimes, honestly, it felt daunting to even write a sentence. So it could be as simple as just one word, like coffee, my cat. Doesn't even matter, right? Because there's no rules, there's no rhyme or reason for it. It's really just forming a healthier habit. Because I tell you what, like, being able to channel those things out on pen and paper tremendously helped me in the healing process. And it wasn't something that happened overnight, but over time it felt really good, because then before I knew it, I was writing down 2, 3, 4 plus things that I felt really good about and that I was grateful for that day or that morning. And it wasn't just one word, it was one sentence. Or at times I remember writing even like a small paragraph's worth. But things like that, I feel like when we're nurturing our body, nurturing our mind, things like that are just going to take time, right? They're just going to take time. And it's not something to be rushed. But I feel like it is very important for us to practice gratitude, because I feel like that a lot of times we tend to get caught up in the everyday mundane, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times when I open up my phone just to go to something, anything, internet wise, on my phone, I'll go to it and automatically there's some kind of clickbait, negative forum posting that's coming up. And I'm like, for a second, I hate it when I like allow it like to seep into my brain, because for a second I glance at it and it does catch my attention, because that's what they're doing, right? They're doing their job. And I'm like, oh no. And then I just keep going and I just do what I need to do. But it's just it just takes seconds, right, for us to give our a second of our attention towards something like that, for it to automatically switch how we're feeling. And it's the worst, right? It's the worst. And I feel like that I remember, like, specifically this morning I caught myself doing the endless scrolling on Facebook. And I almost needed to like swap my hand, because just doing something like that was, it was practical in the beginning, because I was like, okay, I'm going to interact with some of my friends and my customers post. I'm going to help my algorithm on Facebook. But then after a while, I was like, okay, are you really helping your algorithm? Or are you just getting stuck in this warp of just scrolling down and scrolling? And then it was just like mindlessly scrolling, and it didn't really serve a purpose anymore. And then I noticed that it took me from feeling like actually pretty good for the most part compared to the last couple weeks this morning, to just feeling really like bogged down and heavy. And that was just within like an hour, less than an hour. But yeah, but I feel like that when it comes to, I think about gratitude. I mean, even like, for example, like in therapy today, one of the things that I addressed with my therapist that I was talking about was that how grateful I am for the work that my husband and I have put into our marriage over the last couple years. And when I tell you, we have come a long way. And it's funny because a lot of times when I say these things out loud, even in my own therapy sessions, I almost blew my own mind. I almost honestly surprised myself, and I'm like, is this real? Is this real life? Is this me actually saying these things? Because in such a short amount of time, because my husband and I have been married 6 years this November. Derek and I have been married almost 6 years. And what's wild to me is, for one, we had been put through things that most couples, I feel like, go through within like a 10 to 15 year span. Big, heavy things, life-changing things. But the thing is that we, even though it was very rocky terrain towards getting through all that, but I feel like we have now gotten to a point where it's impressive, honestly, with how healthy our communication style is, for example. And I feel like that where we went in, our headspace went into our marriage after some time, was like, we needed to break down the barriers of how we were not only raised, but perhaps the people that were around us growing up, the examples that were shown to us or lack thereof, and just learning from those mistakes, right? Just course correcting, and basically being chain breakers, right? Because we agreed that we didn't want to bring a lot of that into our marriage, because we did in the beginning. We did in the beginning, that good old baggage that everyone likes to talk about. But we walked through it. We walked through it, and then we worked through it. We did. If it was up to me, I probably would have honestly ran through it. But you know what they say is that you have to walk before you run, and that's exactly what we did in our marriage. And what I found is, what I was talking about, for example, with my therapist, is one of the things that I am very, very much so grateful for, is the fact that originally I went into therapy a couple years ago because I, in full transparency, had considered getting therapy for both Derek, my husband, and I. And I was thinking like, oh, we need therapy. We need therapy. It's going to be good for us. But come to find out, I actually really needed it more for myself individually than for him and I as a couple. And what I realized the hard way, and again, going back to practicing gratitude, and I'm so grateful for, is the fact that I not only did that for myself, but I'm now a better version of myself in my marriage, because I did take a step back and I got that help for myself. And what's interesting too, that we were talking about today in my session, was that if it had not been for the work that I've done over the last couple years, I honestly don't really feel like I would be able to actually show up for my husband in the way that I want to be able to support him when he's having a tough time or a hard day, or when he's going through it, right? Or when he's having like an off day, or he's in his feels like I've been recently. And I feel like because I've been able to do the tremendous hard work for myself, I'm able to actually it's almost like, in a way, I think of it as kind of like an out of body experience, because now I'm able to really put myself aside and then show up for him. And then instead of automatically, which I normally in the past would jump to conclusions and then be like, okay, you're doing this on purpose to make me mad, or you're doing this because that I don't like this when it happens, and just pointing the finger like you. And I feel like now, instead of that, it's like, okay, wait a minute, let me pause, let me reflect, let me ponder on this a little bit and then figure out what's really going on. And I'm so grateful for the fact that him and I feel like our communication style is just so much more healthier now. Because instead of me feeling like I know our biggest hang up, for example, whenever we first got married, was a lot of the things that need to get done around the house. And it was like, okay, I know you're not doing this because you're just wanting me to do it. It was just playing basically the blame game, right? And what I realized was that, for example, when it came to household stuff, cleaning, laundry, all that, is that if it bothers me enough, I will get it done. But otherwise, I realize that my to-do list and my agenda and my priorities are not going to fall in line with his. And that is okay because he's going to get things done on his time. Just like for me, good old ADHD self over here, is that I am going to same thing. I realize that I'm the same way, is that I am going to get done what is important to me, and then everything else is going to have to wait. And I realize that he is the same way, and that's okay. And the things that used to bother me, again, if they bother me enough, I will take care of it. Otherwise, if it ain't bothering him, it ain't going to bother me, and we're just going to put it aside, press pause on it, and then get to it and address it some other time. But I could just go on and on, of course, of the things that him and I have been able to address and work through and walk through. But again, I just really just putting it all together in like just one little bubble is that practicing gratitude. And, I'm grateful for the fact that he allows me, he provides the space for me to be not only exactly who I am, ADHD and all, but we've come full circle because we have known each other for, gosh, let's do the math, at least 15 years, 16 years, something like that, give or take 15, 16 years, somewhere in that realm. We didn't date for that entire time, but we've known each other. We dated when we were, oh my gosh, how old was I? Like 18, 19. We dated around that time. And then we dated for 4 years, I want to say, off and on for 4 years, more off than on. But yeah, we've come a long way. But practicing gratitude in general, like I said, whether it's, in a relationship, with your friendships, no matter where you're placing that gratitude, it's important for us to find at least one thing per day that we're grateful for. And again, I feel like that if we take the steps necessary to find at least one thing per day that we're grateful for. And it doesn't matter if you're, I think it's cool, honestly, if you would share it through social media, because you never know, you might get others to join in on it. But if you're going to do like I did a couple years back and just journal it, that's good too. But one thing a day that you're grateful for. And I think it'd be fun to get others involved in it too. Like if you have kids or grandkids, touch base with them, especially if you're picking the kids up, taking them to school first thing in the morning, picking them up from school, hanging out with them after school. If you got grandkids, you're spending time with them on the weekends. Just that, can you imagine how incredible of a conversation starter that would be? To be like, what are you grateful for today? I just think that's so fun. And then again, that can be all sort of things. And honestly, I think it would be really cute too, asking kids what they're grateful for, because of just the pureness, the pure heart that they would have. I can only imagine what they would mention. Because I feel like as adults, we go into more of a practical realm, right? I'm grateful that I can pay my bills. I'm grateful that I have a roof over my head. I'm grateful for, and it's adult life things, right? But then as a kid, I can't even imagine what a child would say. I'm grateful for ice cream, or I don't know. I'm grateful for unicorns. That honestly would probably be what I would say as a kid. But anyways, hope you guys have an incredible week. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. If anything this week, I hope you find at least one thing. Find one thing that you're grateful for. And if it involves somebody, let them know. If you live with somebody, let them know, hey, I'm grateful for, and then fill in the blank. But I hope you'll have an incredible week. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. So glad to be back. And as always, don't forget to unscramble your faith and find clarity in the chaos. Thank you guys so much. Y'all have a good day.